Hello, everyone. This is your host, Debra Poneman, and I'd like to welcome you to our call with today's guest, Jeanette Maw. Jeanette is a master certified coach and the founder of Good Vibe Coaching. I love that name. She's on a mission to inspire deliberate creators, which she does through her blog, her online university, one-on-one coaching, group gatherings, and speaking events. Developed through her own experience, study, and practice, Jeanette shares a practical, down-to-earth approach to deliberate creation for creating lives we love. And today you're going to discover how you could be handicapping your manifesting exercises without realizing it. Also, how to determine whether you're trying too hard to make it happen. You'll discover secrets to vibrational alignment that are right under your nose, the true key to getting what you want, as well as the number one crucial ingredient to manifesting success. Wow, that all sounds very juicy. Jeanette, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the call.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to play with you today, Debra.
I am super excited too. And you know what I'd like you to do before I dive into my 1,000,001 questions? Can you take a few minutes and share the major turning points that allowed you to manifest your success and manifest this body of knowledge that you share with the world?
Yeah. Boy, what I talk about these days is very different from the place that I spent most of my life. These concepts that we're sharing here today are not the way I was raised. Let's put it that way. So I was living a very traditional life. I had a corporate job where I had tremendous success, as success is traditionally defined. I wasn't experiencing it in the way that I define success for myself now, which is joy and delight. But I had a fabulous job. I made amazing money. Everyone thought I was extremely successful. And I felt like a zombie. My job was not in alignment with my values. At the time, I didn't even think about values. I didn't know what mine were, and I certainly didn't know that it was important to live in accordance with them. So I was just living completely out of my personal integrity and not realizing the toll that was taking on my life, not just on my relationships, but also on my physical health. So I spent a lot of time in relationships that weren't working for me, in work that was soul-sucking. In fact, it was on the job one day, I would spend my lunch breaks at the bookstore to get a little bit of relief. I loved the bookstore. In fact, I was a self-help book junkie. Those were the shelves that I spent all my time in when I took a break from work. And I worked in financial services, by the way. I spent most of my time talking with people about how important it was to save their money, because Social Security wouldn't be enough and lifespans were increasing. And I really spent a lot of time scaring people into thinking they needed to save money in order to get through their life. That was my job, and I was really good at it. One day I was at the bookstore, and I ran across a book that talked about how to get everything that you ever wanted in life, which I thought, with a book title like that, how can you not read this book? So I didn't even browse through it before I bought a copy to take home. And shortly after, a couple weeks after I bought this book, but I hadn't cracked it, I hadn't started reading it, I had an experience out in the backyard where the one thing in my life, I had one thing that brought me just a little bit of joy. I was volunteering as a foster mom for orphaned dogs and cats, kittens and puppies, and I had a variety of cats and dogs at my house, and that was really the only thing that was getting me through these days, the only thing that gave my life any meaning. And one day I was out in the backyard. I had 8 big dogs in my little 850 square foot house. I had 8 big foster dogs, and cleaning up after them in the backyard one day, it broke my heart to realize the poop wouldn't scoop, Debra. And it was just rolling along. I was trying to scoop it, it wouldn't scoop it. I had a nervous breakdown because I realized my yard is dirt. There's no grass left from all the dog traffic and the hot Utah sun. I had no grass left, and I used to love my lawn, and it was gone. And so it was just my breaking point. I can't explain why that's what it was, but I threw the pooper scooper in one direction. It landed on the neighbor's roof, and I threw the bag of poop in another direction. It went in the neighbor's yard, and I went to bed. I thought I was going to bed permanently. I was just giving up. I mean, it was breakdown city. And that's where I was when I decided it's time to read a book, because here I am in bed. I'm done with work. I'm done with showering. I'm done with answering the phone. I was done. So I started reading this book just out of boredom. And what I discovered was that the way that I'm thinking and the way that I'm feeling is what directs what happens in my life. That was a new concept for me. And I'll be honest, I didn't even believe it. I was skeptic with a capital S, but I had a personal rule for myself where every book that I read, I had a rule that I would do at least one thing before I put it back on the shelf. And the least crazy thing I could find in this book was something called scripting, where you speak out loud about what you want as if it's already done. So I came out of the bedroom. I had a live-in boyfriend at the time, and he was the one who was in charge now of all the dogs and the cats. So he was quickly reaching the end of his rope as well, because it's a lot of work. And I came out to him and I said, this is going to sound crazy, but just hear me out. And I started scripting about how our most challenging foster dog got adopted. And I'm just making it up. And I don't even believe this stuff is going to make any difference. I'm just doing it because I have that personal rule. So I say to him, isn't it great how Jeff got adopted by that husband and wife? And I'm just making it up on the fly, Deb. I don't have this written or prepared. And they have the 2 kids, and they have the other dog for him to play with, and they live nearby so we could visit him whenever we wanted, and they have plenty of money so they can handle whatever his medical needs might be. Isn't that great? And in the meantime, Jeff is not a dog I named, by the way. He came to us with that name. But he's laying at my feet the whole time, and my boyfriend's looking at me like I have 2 heads. But he saw me have my little breakdown in the backyard the other day, so he wasn't asking any questions. So I said, yeah, isn't that great? And I turned on my heels, and I went back to bed. That was Thursday night. Saturday morning, because I'm still not doing anything, he has to take all the dogs, all the cats to the same adoption fair they've been going to for the past 3 months. And after he drops them off, he comes back home, and about an hour later, the phone rings, and I can tell on caller ID. I always cry when I tell this story. I'm going to try not to cry too much. I could tell on caller ID it was the woman who runs the adoption fair. And the only reason they call you that early is to tell you got to come get your dog. Either they're sick or they're acting up or there's no room for them. So he picks up the phone. I can tell from caller ID that it's the woman who runs the adoption fair. He picks up the phone because he's a nice guy, and he figures if there's any problems, he wants to help out. And I can hear her say on the other end of the line, you got to get down here right away. And I hit him in the shoulder because I was mad at him. I said, I told you so. And she went on to say, there's 2 families down here fighting over Jeff, and we don't know who to give him to. Okay, that never happens in our circle. First of all, you have to take like a dozen applications on an animal before you even have one worth considering, because they reject them for all sorts of reasons. If you ever lost a dog, or if you ever let them ride in the back of the truck, or if you have young kids, you get rejected for a whole bunch of reasons. So for her to say they've got 2 fighting over him that are so perfect she can't even pick, it didn't compute. But I drove with him down to the adoption fair and walked through the door, and they handed me the paperwork. And oh my gosh, there were these 2 families, husband and wife. They brought their 2 kids. They each had a dog. I looked at their paperwork. I could understand now why she couldn't decide, because they were both perfect. Both of these families were perfect. This never happens to us, especially I'd been in a 3-month dry spell for adoptions. Like I was only getting more animals returned to me. I wasn't getting any adoptions out. So this was definitely different for me, and I'll tell you, it was dumbfounding. I was literally speechless, Deborah. I handed the paperwork back, and I walked back out to the parking lot, and I sat in the car just to reflect on what had happened here, because when I engaged that scripting routine, I didn't even believe in it. I thought it was ridiculous. I didn't actually think anything would come from it, and here there were 2 people fighting over this dog. No one had been looking at him in the entire time we'd been showing him. Not only did Jeff get adopted that day, but the next day one of my other really challenging dogs got adopted. And so that was Saturday, Jeff got adopted. Sunday, Oakley got adopted. And on Tuesday night, another local rescue group offered to take 2 of my black labs off my hands. So I was down 4 dogs in 4 days. That felt like a miracle to me. And I'll tell you what, I have not been the same person since, because that really got my attention. That there is something there's something powerful about the way we focus, the way we speak, the way we think, the pictures that we hold, and that makes all the difference about what unfolds next in our lives.
Wow. What an amazing concrete story.
Well, I'll tell you what it did. So here I am working a job that I hate. I pretty soon started taking this stuff to work with me, not just practicing it in my job, but talking about it with other people. And it did a pretty big turnaround for my performance at work. And I have some amazing stories to tell about that as well. But it created a new desire, because what I discovered was that I was so excited about this thing that could make such an incredible difference in our lives, and no one wanted to hear about it. Like, everyone just thought I was crazy. They looked at me the same way my boyfriend did when I was scripted with him that night about how great it was that Jeff got adopted. They pretty soon stopped coming over to my cubicle to have conversations with me. So I started to have this desire. You know what? I just wish there were other people I could talk to about this stuff. This was a long time ago, long before The Secret, long before Asking It Is Given. So here I was, just having this desire to connect with other people who were excited about this as well. And then pretty soon that desire evolved into, well, wouldn't it be great if I got paid to do it so I could quit this stupid job? So here I am today, living my dream come true life, talking with other people about this stuff that I am so fired up about. There isn't anything else that makes a bigger difference in someone's life than understanding our power to create our reality.
That is such a fabulous, fabulous concrete story. And now the other thing that I love about what you teach is that you say that we can manifest by being slackers. I know a lot of people who would really love that idea. Sounds very intriguing, maybe too good to be true. Can you explain what you mean by slacker manifesting?
You know, there are a lot of people who have been trained so strongly that we have to work hard for our rewards, that we have to pay our dues and roll up our sleeves and sweat it out for what we want, that it does sound too good to be true, that relaxing, that chilling out is the best path to get what we want. But boy, my experience is otherwise. My experience is that the more relaxed, the more we prioritize having fun and having a good time, the easier it is for us to live lives that we love, not just in general, but also to get specifically the things that we're interested in having, whether it's healthier bodies or better relationships or bigger bank accounts. But the term slacker manifesting was coined by my colleague, Abigail Steidley, and her story was such that a lot of people could probably relate to this. She was doing life a very traditional way through action, making it happen, thinking that nothing's going to happen if she didn't make it happen. And in the process, she was exhausting herself. She was so overwhelmed that she got to the point where she literally couldn't physically continue. So she ended up in bed for 5 days. And in that process of just being so exhausted, she literally couldn't get up. That's when everything that she'd been working so hard to make happen started to happen. Once she stopped working so hard for it. And that got her attention in the same way that whole scripting and the dog adoptions got my attention. And she realized that there's something really powerful about relaxing, about not trying so hard. When she shared this with me, I got to say I ran with it, because what I've noticed in my work, as I share with people about our power to create our reality, that some people are just replacing old habits of working hard, trying to make things happen through action. They replace that with manifesting processes. So now they're working hard at their manifesting and their law of attraction work, but they're still engaged in a vibration that prevents their success from happening, because everything in the world is happening in response to what our vibrational frequency is, what our energy is. So if I am being someone who is exhausted and overwhelmed, I'm not going to attract anything other than what's going to contribute to more exhaustion and overwhelm. So if what I want is to be happy, to feel good, to feel peaceful, whatever it is that I desire, in order to experience that, I have to become that first. And that's what Abigail experienced or discovered by accident, by just being so tired she literally couldn't continue. So as she gives herself this break, things started happening. What I'd love for people to do is to be more conscious about that, not to run ourselves into the ground that way by getting so tired, but to be more proactive about letting ease and relaxation and enjoyment be a major thing that we experience in regular daily life, and recognize how that can support all of our dreams coming true. Because, Debra, a lot of people think, nothing's going to happen unless you go make it happen. And it isn't action that makes the biggest difference for us. It's our vibration. And yes, sometimes action is what helps us manage our vibration, but sometimes action is what's kinking our vibration. So I think my mission is to help people become more aware of what energy they're flowing and how to manage that, and recognize that sometimes the best thing what we can do is just chill out. And then our dreams often come true much more easily, much more effortlessly when we're in that routine.
But how do we know? How do we know if we're trying too hard to make something happen?
I think there's 3 ways to tell. Number 1, if you're exhausted, that's a sign you're trying too hard to make something happen. Feelings of exhaustion or overwhelm, that's a big clue. Another one, if you're not having fun, that's a clue you're trying too hard to make something happen, because we really actually don't have to suffer in order to get what we want. So if you're in a routine of suffering, of joyless living, that's another sign you're trying too hard. And I think a third sign is if you're not getting results. If you're taking a ton of action and nothing's happening, you're trying too hard. It really isn't that hard to get what we want, no matter what it is that we want. And I think that's an important thing for us to engage and embrace, because so many of us are trained otherwise, that, if it's worth having, it's worth working hard for, it's worth sweating for. If you're working hard and you're not getting results, that's a sign you're trying too hard.
Okay, all 3 of these. If you're exhausted, obviously, and if you're not having fun, because what is life for? But if you're not getting the results, then it could be because you're trying too hard. Boy, we sure are living in a different energetic time. And I know that you say that what we need to do is raise our vibe. Your whole thing is called good vibe coaching. So tell me what you mean by raising the vibe.
Well, our vibration is a reflection of what our energy is. And because like attracts like, whatever energy I'm being, whatever frequency or vibration I am being, that's what I'm creating. That's what I'm attracting. That's what I experience, because that's what my energy is. So our vibration is simply, it's what thoughts we're thinking, what pictures we're holding in mind, what things we're speaking out into the world. And also part of it is what actions we're taking. So if we can just shift those things and create a different energy, we attract something completely different. I was thinking about how, this is one of my more recent Slacker manifesting stories. I had decided that I wanted to manifest $1,000 in 10 days, just as a fun experiment to put on the blog for manifesting what we want. So I engaged a routine, and that routine included some fun things, like I made myself a mantra. I created some fun visuals because I was manifesting this money out of the clear blue. I didn't want it to be associated with work. I just wanted it to be for fun, out of thin air. So I got like a blue cup, a little plastic tumbler, and I put those pretend $1 million bills in it, so it literally looked like money coming out of the clear blue. That was kind of fun. I practiced a variety of very traditional manifesting exercises. I'd say probably 7 or 8 of them I put into practice. And within a couple of days, I got a whiff of some money coming out of the clear blue. It was a $70,000 windfall, but it didn't come to fruition. I got like a little glimpse of it, and then it disappeared. So I got kind of frustrated, and I set the thing aside for several weeks before I got inspired to pick it up again. And this time when I picked it up, I didn't try so hard. This time, all I did was I pretended I was telling the story to my best friend about how cool it was that I manifested $1,000 in 10 days. And I just wrote it down the way I would be telling him if he were here and I was telling him the story face to face. It was just a couple paragraphs long, and that's all I did. I didn't do anything else other than that. I didn't use mantras. I didn't use visualizations. I didn't practice feeling the feelings. I just totally forgot about it. And on the 4th day, after just writing that one entry out of how cool it was, telling Greg about how I manifested this money, I sure enough manifested $5,000 out of the clear blue. It was a really, really, really fun story. Yeah, it had nothing to do with my work. It was nothing that I was expecting in any way, shape, or form. But what was key to me in this whole experience was the effortlessness of my second attempt. I was doing that thing that I talk about in Slacker manifesting, how so many people do this when we try too hard at things. Even sometimes we're trying too hard with our manifesting. And when we hold it lightly, when we approach it with an ease and an effortlessness, that makes it easier for things to roll in than when we're working too hard at it. So, I'm still learning this myself. So it's one of the reasons I'm super passionate to share this with other people, because I know how easy it is to make it work, to manifest what we want.
This is so brilliant, Jeanette, because I have been a student of the law of attraction for decades, and you are the first person that I have ever heard say, this unique angle that it's just like we're replacing when we used to work really hard at, working our jobs in order to manifest. And then we thought, no, we can manifest by our thoughts and the law of attraction. And then we start working really hard at the law of
right?
attraction. You're the first person that's pointed out that that's just as detrimental. And when you take it lightly and let it go, look what can happen.
I think that's how deeply ingrained the habits of working hard are in our culture and society. When I ask, okay, why do people do this? I think it's part of our worthiness. It's how we prove ourselves deserving of what we want. And it's so deeply ingrained that I think it really requires us to be conscious about choosing ease, choosing relaxation, to be willing to chill out and let it be easy. It does challenge. Like when they ask the question, how good are you willing to let it be? This practice will take you to a whole new level of that, because it really doesn't have to be as hard as most of us have been making it.
Well, do you have any techniques to help us raise our vibration so we could be vibrating where you are?
I will say this too. I'm a rising Capricorn astrologically, so what I understand about that is that I'm wired for working. This is something I have to practice. This does not come easy to me. I am not someone who's just naturally happy-go-lucky and carefree and just trusting everything to work out in the world. This was a completely different way of living, so I'm still practicing much of this myself. And the things that I've found most effective for me, and there are different things for different people that can work really well, but for me, to continually remind myself to look for the ease, to orient myself towards taking it easy. And I do that by posting sticky notes. I have a couple in the office here. I have one on the refrigerator. I have one upstairs with various questions like this. What would feel fabulous next? What would be fun right now? What would feel better today? So that I'm continuing to point myself in the direction of relaxing, taking it easier, prioritizing joy and fun rather than working hard to get it done. So for me, those questions posted as reminders, because I'm not going to trust myself to remember it in my head. I want the visual reminders outside here in my world. And I also practice surrounding myself with other people who engage this as well. Because if we're the only one practicing this, it can feel really confrontational when everyone else around us, first of all, starts to question what we're doing. And that input can be really hard to keep going with a practice like this. So to surround yourself with like-minded others, even if it's just one other manifesting buddy who sees the world the way you do, you can support each other in recognizing when someone's working too hard, because sometimes you won't see it right away and someone else will see it first. So having a friend who can help you get better at this can be really powerful as well.
And give them permission to call you on it or to kind of support you.
It has to be the right friend. Sometimes hearing that from the wrong person just makes us more irritated. So it does have to be the right person. For a long time, I didn't have anyone in my life like that. I was definitely unique in my world for engaging these beliefs and practicing this way of living. So I know how easy it is to feel lonely in this kind of work. But it doesn't have to be that way, especially today. There are more and more people who are on board with this than there ever were before.
Yeah. Well, do you have any other secrets for us to vibrational alignment?
I got to say that I think this is something I myself made a lot of work for many years. Like I would get a little paranoid if I was engaging something that I knew was drawing my vibration down or, making me feel bad. I would get a little paranoid about what that meant that I was attracting. So I did a lot of work around paying attention, increasing my awareness, creating new habits. But really, it doesn't have to be that hard. I think it can be as simple as if you just make it a priority to get happy. It's that simple. I like the way Bashar says it, to follow your highest excitement, or Joseph Campbell tells us, follow your bliss. I think really, truly, there's something within us that knows what we would enjoy, that knows what would be fun, our idea of a good time. And if we just listen for that and honor it, like make room for that in our life, it's that simple. Because vibrational alignment, the only reason we ever want anything is because of how we think it's going to make us feel. We think it's going to make us feel some sort of better, whether that's happy or free or secure or wanted or whatever. If we just find ways to feel that way now, we're practicing that vibrational alignment. So the easy way to practice that is prioritize happiness. And then I think for us to do a decent job of that, it's important for us to know ourselves well. This is something that I really appreciate from my coach training background, the work that we are trained to take our clients through around discovering our core values, to know what it is that matters to us in life. I mean, to get really specific about identifying that and then creating plans for honoring that so that we're living what matters to us. We're living our core values. I think that's an easy way for us to practice that raised vibration. And if that sounds, though, complicated to someone, really just fall back on just get happy. And I know, Debra, for some people who feel really frustrated or angry or depressed, people who are far, far, far away from happiness, I know I've been there myself, that instruction can feel really useless. So sometimes the better way to look at it is just give yourself relief. If you're so far away from happiness that you can't even imagine what that would be, then just give yourself some relief. And you're the one who's going to know what that is best. And that can show up in a wide variety of ways, whether it's making changes in relationships or jobs or our physical well-being or our environment. I mean, sometimes just washing the dishes or vacuuming the carpet. I got to be honest, when I vacuum the carpet, I feel better. I like having clean floors. That's an easy way for me to get a little lift. So if I'm in a really bad mood, I'll pull out the vacuum. I'll feel some higher vibrations when I do that. So it doesn't have to be hard stuff, but we do have to know ourselves well and be willing to honor whatever that is, because different things work for different people.
Beautiful. And I love that. I mean, you know the things that give you a little boost, like vacuuming. For me, it's doing the dishes. I love doing the dishes. And then when they're all put away and the sink's all clean, I'm so freaking happy. So everybody knows those little things. And this is also brilliant. Just give yourself a little lift, like baby steps.
Yeah.
Baby step, baby step, baby step. I love that. And you also said that the written word can help manifest our goals and dreams. So how do you use the written word?
Okay, so I don't know what it is for me, and I know I'm not alone, but putting things in writing gives me a much stronger focus. So when I'm just trying to think something in my mind or trying to, put pictures in my head, writing it down gives me tremendous focus. And focus is very powerful. Just like when I was scripting out loud saying, isn't it great how Jeff got adopted? Speaking the words can be powerful as well, but for me, putting it in writing is even more so. I think it's because my mind doesn't have a chance to wander off. I don't know why. I've read different books about why it's so powerful to actually handwrite it. I don't exactly know how to explain that. All I know is that for me, it works. So the way, though, that a lot of us have been trained to use writing is through a traditional journal where, we express how we're feeling, what we're thinking, what happened in our day. That's how many people use a journal, to express themselves and explore their feelings. But the way I learned how to use this was to create what we wanted by writing down what it is that we want as if it's already done. What I learned was that if we do that, if we just write a page a day about what we want as if it's already done, by the time we get to the end of our book, it will be a done deal. Or it'll be so close we can reach out and touch it. I had first learned this from someone who had been a hairstylist, and she wanted her own shop, and she used this journaling technique in order to create that. So I'd learned it from someone who had tremendous success with it, and I'd heard other people talk about it as well, but I'd never practiced it myself until one day I was in corporate world still. This was back when I still had a job, and I'd just gotten out of a staff meeting where they basically said, all of us are out of jobs. If you salespeople don't turn your numbers around in 2 weeks, they're pulling the plug on the whole department, and we're all out of jobs. So I felt like I'd just been fired because there was no way we were going to be able to turn this around in 2 weeks. So I went back to my desk and I asked myself, okay, what they've been having us do, which was really traditional action, they had us cold calling, they gave us numbers, we had to cold call and read scripts and try to get appointments set up. None of it was working. I couldn't get past a secretary to save my life. And there was tremendous pressure from management. They were looking at our stats. There's just tremendous pressure to try to make something happen. After that meeting, I walked back to my desk and I said, okay, what they've been having us do doesn't work. What do I want to do? And I remembered this technique called Pray Rain journaling. So I got out a little notebook, maybe 2 inches by 3 inches with maybe 25 pages in it. But I thought that's good because I don't have long. So I opened up the first page and I wrote, isn't it great how prospects find me, how excited they are to hear about my product, what a perfect match we are, what great rapport we have, how they can't wait for me to implement. Just basically 5 sentences because I didn't have much room on this little page. But I wrote it as if it had already happened, and it was completely different from what my reality had been. I mean, this was a fantasy compared to what I'd been experiencing on this job. So after I wrote that page up, I asked myself, what feels good next? One of the ways we practice alignment. What feels good next? I had not been bringing this to this job. I'd been doing what they told me until basically I felt like we'd been fired. So when I asked myself what feels good next, the answer was go have lunch, because I'd been eating out of the vending machine. We were so stressed to make things happen, I wasn't even taking proper lunches. So this time I left the building. I went to my favorite restaurant across the street, and it was a gorgeous spring day, and I sat outside and ate my favorite lunch. And I kicked my feet up on a chair. I mean, I was lingering, and I was feeding leftover bread to the sparrows, and I was really enjoying myself. And after an hour and a half of that, of proper goofing off, I asked myself, okay, what sounds good next? And the answer I got from inside was go back to work, which surprised me, but I did. I went back to work. In the elevator, on my way back up to my office, there was a guy in the elevator, and he said, who are you? And I'd made the mistake a couple of weeks ago, Debra, of asking someone in the elevator who he was, and it was the president of the company. Like, major faux pas in corporate world. If you only know one person on the job, it should be the big boss. So I was not going to make that mistake again. So when this stranger asks me who I am, I don't ask who he is. I just tell him who I am. And he says, well, I know all the people who work for the bank. He said, what do you do? And I said, I sell small business 401k plans. He said, what? I didn't know the bank sells small business 401k plans. I said, yep, we do. And he said, you got to come with me. And in my mind, I'm thinking, great. So I've got an upper manager here who doesn't even know about this product. And I'm thinking, this is part of the reason we can't even get this thing sold. People don't even know about it that work here at the bank. So I follow him up to his office. I'm thinking I'm going to have to go explain to him about, this department that we have and what we're doing there. But he takes me to his office, and he doesn't actually work for the bank. I thought the whole building was just bank people, but it turns out he's the property manager. They have teeny-weeny office space in this building, so he wasn't a bank person. So he takes me into his office, and he shows me his desk. It is covered with sales literature from 401k vendors. And he says to me, I haven't been able to make heads or tails of this in weeks. Can you help me? I could talk 401k plans all day long if someone gives me a chance to. So I sat down, and I had my satchel with me. So I had all my information with me here, and here's all my competitors. And we had a fabulous conversation for like 15, 20 minutes as I talked about what he needed to know about them and, how we were different from these guys. And based on what he said about his plan, this is what might work best. Had a fabulous conversation. After about 15 minutes, he stood up, and I thought, okay, my fun's over. Now I got to go back to work. But instead of walking me to the elevator, he walks me down the hall to his HR director, and he says, Shelley, meet Jeanette. Jeanette, meet Shelley. This is another story that makes me cry. He turns to Shelley, and he says, Shelley, Jeanette's going to be implementing our 401k plan. Sign whatever she needs you to sign. And he turns to me, and he says, how soon can you have that to us? And Debra, what they taught us in our sales training course is that it takes like 6 weeks, best case scenario, 6 weeks from start to finish to identify a prospect, set up a meeting, create a presentation, overcome objections, da-da-da-da-da. And here it happened in a matter of minutes. That's why I'm a big fan of putting things in writing. But the key is write it as if it's already a done deal. Write what you want as if it's already happened. And if you do that once a day, and the time that you're doing that, you're practicing alignment. You're sending the signal that says, I got what I wanted. And when we send that signal, universe has to make us right in some form or fashion, and it has to figure us out. It has to figure it out. We don't have to figure it out. We don't have to make it happen. All we have to do is do what feels good, which is why Slacker manifesting is so powerful, because asking that question, what feels good next, instead of trying to make something happen, is often what puts us in the right places at the right time, which is why I could be in the elevator in a good mood after having a fabulous lunch with the guy who needs exactly what I got.
Another key thing is that you went out to lunch instead of eating from the vending machine, even though it was like, I don't really have time to go out to lunch, but you did it because you followed your own advice.
And get this, so after I become their number one salesperson, my manager's like, Jeanette, the rest of the team could use some tips, And I didn't know how to say, well, I'm goofing off a lot. I stop and chat at my coworkers' desks. I mean, I'm doing everything they would not approve of. But my manager wasn't on site. My manager was in a different state, so he didn't know what my hours were. He didn't know how long my lunches were. He didn't know all the chatting I was doing with the other bank people. But I was creating tremendous success through slacking. And I didn't know exactly how to say that in the meeting. I kind of stumbled and stuttered through that. But the couple people I did share it with, they just thought I was crazy. They stopped talking to me.
Oh, God. That's okay. You didn't want to talk to them anyway. You said that you have to be careful about who you talk to. So
it's true. It's true.
Because you have the vibrational line. This is so fantastic. Okay. What are some of the common obstacles that maybe we can avoid?
Yeah. Well, in my experience in working with my own manifesting practices as well as the clients I've worked with, attachment is a really big one. You know, when we have to have it, when we feel some need around it, when we make it a big deal or it's really important, that anxiety, that tension, there's a charge in that energy that isn't always helpful. I'm not saying it's not possible to manifest when we feel a lot of pressure, but that's a good vibration to shift, because that need, when I think there's something that I need, I'm sending the signal that says I need this, and the universe is going to make me right no matter what I vibrate. So when I'm vibrating need, it's basically saying, yeah, she needs it. It's not satisfaction. It's not having. It's not happiness. Success is a different vibration than need. So I think that's one of the biggest ones that we want to pay attention to. And the way to avoid that really is to get a different perspective on it, whether it's to make peace with our current situation, our present circumstances, or to just pretend like we already have it. I mean, there are a variety of ways we can release that energy, but that's really what we want to focus on doing. Practice feeling satisfied or complete or having it rather than wanting it or needing it. We're so attached to what's realistic or practical that we don't even believe in the things that we want. Like, we know what's possible in a way that shuts things down. This happened to me the other day. This is embarrassing how much of this I'm still learning myself. But, oh yeah, someone had told me to make a phone call the other day. I had a big expense, and someone suggested it might be covered by my homeowner's policy, believe it or not. I was like, there's no way this is covered by homeowners. That sounded like the most ridiculous thing ever. But they said, well, you never know. And I actually had two people tell me that. And the second person I had a lot of respect for, so I thought, all right, I'll just call just so I can tell him next time he asks me, yes, I called, and no, I'm not covered. So I'm calling my homeowner's insurance company, and I realize I'm expecting them to tell me no, when the truth is I would love for this to be covered. I'd love to not be paying for this myself. So before I finished dialing the number, I paused and I opened up the possibility. And I did that by saying to myself, this is my favorite way to do it. And again, different things work for different people. But what works for me is to say to myself, stranger things have happened. To just open the door, give universe something, a little opening to work with. So I said to myself, stranger things have happened. And then I repeated one of my favorite mantras, I am well supported. And I really feel that what made the difference there was saying stranger things have happened, because before then I completely expected them to say no. So I get on the phone with the insurance company and I lay it out for them what I'm dealing with, and they didn't say no immediately. They're like, well, we got to look into it. And I was like, whoa, that in itself already, I already consider this a win, that it might possibly be. She didn't shut me down instantly. So I was glad she didn't have an answer immediately, because it gave me a little more time to get more lined up with a good answer. So I practiced the feeling of what it would feel like for them to say, yes, you're covered. I practiced that delight and that laughter, the giggle, because that's really how I thought I would feel when they say, yeah, we got this for you, you're covered. So I practiced that a little bit, and then a couple days later, I talked with someone who, sure enough, said, yes, you do have coverage for this, which was absolutely mind-boggling to me. No one else in my world could believe it. No one could believe it. So opening up to miracles, not knowing what's possible so well, unless we know what's possible in a really big way. I'm not saying this very well, Debra.
We are so getting this. You're saying it perfectly. Keep going.
Yeah, so to open up to, I like how Jack Canfield says it. He says, become a world-class asker. Like, to be willing to let big, beautiful things into your world rather than know what's possible and know what's too good to be true and dismiss the stuff that you might really want just because it doesn't seem practical or realistic. When we know our power to create our reality based on how we focus, we know there isn't anything out of reach. If we can imagine it, we can have it, because that's where everything originates from our consciousness, from our willingness to focus on it. That's how things become reality. So if we can imagine it, it can be real for us. So I think one way for us to get better at this is to become a student of the miraculous, to look around in the world and see amazing things that are happening. It helps us believe easier in amazing things for ourselves. But again, my favorite way to practice that is just to use the mantra, stranger things have happened. But we're not asking ourselves to actually believe that it is happening or has happened, because for some people that's too big a stretch, but just give the universe a little opening and it will have some fun with you.
Okay, if you just had to tell us one most crucial ingredient, if we can only do one thing to manifest success.
Self-love. There is no doubt in my mind that is what makes the biggest difference for all of us. In fact, very often when I get a new client, I'll just ask them to start being better to themselves. And that was very often the obstacle that was keeping their dream from manifesting, because most of us aren't taught that that's important. Most of us were taught that we needed to do something different in order to be worthy. Even silly stuff like, oh, mom and dad approving of us after we make our bed or eat our vegetables or be nice to our sister, right? Like once we do something different, then we get the love or the acknowledgement or the appreciation. I mean, it's a very common parenting technique, but it's ingrained in us at a very young age that there's something not right with us the way we are, that we have to do something different or be different before we get that love and approval, which is why I think it's so important for us to be very conscious about giving ourselves the true message, which is that we are complete, whole, and perfect already, automatically, always, that there aren't too many others in the world who give us that kind of a conditional love. If you guys have a dog, then you probably get it from your dog. But in most of our relationships, I don't think many of us really have an experience of unconditional love, and it's crucial that we give that to ourselves, because the universe can only be as good to you as you are to yourself. Because if you feel that you're not worthy or that you don't deserve something, the universe has to prove you right no matter what ridiculous thing you're thinking. So as soon as we get on board with the message of that we are complete, whole, and perfect, that we are lovable just as we are, that in itself, we don't even have to do anything else before all the cool stuff starts happening. And this isn't something that a lot of people are well practiced at, because most of us weren't taught that this is important. Most of us were taught, go do all the things in order to feel worthy, and it's just not the case.
Right.
So self-love, I'd call that the number one key to successful manifesting.
Fantastic. Wow. Okay, so now I'm curious. We've heard about many of your miracles, and they have just been awesome. And I was wondering if you could take a few minutes and share some of the amazing turnarounds you've seen from your clients and your students and other people who have applied what you teach.
Well, I do have some really cool stories to share from people who've been plugged into my world. And I got to say, one of my favorites is I worked with a guy who got a letter from the IRS. I will say this too. What I love about his story is that he was brand new to this stuff. He had not spent years immersed in these ideas or practicing these principles. This was new to him, and he was a skeptic. He was actually referred to me by his wife. So he was pretty skeptical. Anyway, very early on in our work, he gets a letter from the IRS, and that was pretty devastating to him because he had a variety of reasons why that was not his idea of a good time. It was easy for him to imagine problems coming from that, not just the headache of dealing with it, but what it could cost him financially to have to go through this. But in our early work together, what he'd learned was that his thoughts are things that are creating his reality. So instead of focusing on this is going to be a big problem, this is going to be big trouble, this is going to cost me a lot of money, instead he engaged the thought, you know what, it's all going to be fine. This is all going to be fine. And he got the letter on a Friday. He called his accountant, or he forwarded the letter before he went off on a fun weekend with his friends. They were just going to a casino to go blow off some steam, just having some fun with the boys. And while he was at this casino, he decided to apply some of his new law of attraction ideas, and he was intending for himself to be a big winner. He wanted to be a really big winner. And so he was intending it, he was feeling it, he was practicing the stuff. And he had a couple of hands where, like, he had the best hand you could possibly have. But overall, as the weekend went, he left money at the casino. We'll just put it that way. But he had been practicing that vibration of I'm a big winner. At the same time that he was reminding himself, every time he'd go back to think about that audit, he would just remind himself, you know what, it's going to be fine. So Monday morning, he gets home and he gets a call from his accountant who was going through all of his paperwork after getting the IRS audit letter. And what he discovered was that in the process of putting together the paperwork the IRS was asking for, the accountant discovered an account with my client's name on it that was valued at over $500,000 that my client never knew about.
Whoa.
Yeah, he would not have known about this otherwise if his accountant hadn't gone digging through everything. And he felt kind of sheepish, because this account was something from when he'd been in the workforce years ago, and they had some sort of retirement account that he never knew about. So it was a pretty big windfall. And what I heard as he's sharing this story with me is that he let go of the thoughts of, this IRS audit is going to be a huge problem. Instead, he let it be fine. And then he was also practicing the feeling of a big winner, being a big winner all weekend. So a $500,000 windfall, I think for most people, we'd qualify that as a big winner. So I love that story. I have another story, too, from a guy who, oh, gosh, he was in a bad way. I had offered a group course once upon a time, pay what you want, if you want, when you want. Like you could get into this thing basically for free, just, $1 to sign up. We were doing money manifesting is what we were focusing on. This guy called me because he didn't even have $1 to get into the course, and he was asking for a seat in it, even though he didn't have $1 to get in. He'd been bankrupt. He was on the verge of homelessness, and he was also new to law of attraction. So I gave him a seat to the course, and within 2 weeks of our start date, just practicing the stuff I share in all my material, he called me after 2 weeks to tell me, this is another story that gets me a little choked up, about he had a $5.5 million windfall in 2 weeks, a guy that was on the verge of homelessness. The way his story unfolded was, he had a friend that was over to his house. He said his kids had played with his mother's junk jewelry collection, like they'd play dress up, and sometimes one of his kids would let a prom date wear something, but it was just, costume jewelry. But one of his friends came over one day, and one of these pieces was on the table, and his friend said, "Whoa, what is this?" And he said, "It's from my mom's jewelry collection. It's not worth anything." And his friend said, "This looks like it's worth something. You should have this checked out." And he said, "No, that's ridiculous. If my parents had anything of value, trust me, they would have sold it a long time ago because they've had, generational poverty." But his friend pursued it, and long story short, they had someone look at it from an auction house. So they looked at it, and what they said was, they contacted my friend, I consider him a friend, and said, they told him the history of the piece. It came from Russia centuries ago, and they had all this history about it. And they said to him, "We're sure that you would never want to part with a piece this unique and amazing, but if you ever did, we would be more than happy to represent you for it at auction. We anticipate it would probably go between $5 and $6 million."
Oh, my.
Yeah, he told me the only way I can explain how something like that got in my mom's junk jewelry collection was that he said his dad used to trade behind the Iron Curtain. He said, "I don't know how. That's the only thing I can imagine." But that definitely changed things for him and for his family. So that's another one of my favorite stories. But I want to tell just two money stories. There was a client, too, contacted me because she had had no luck in relationships. She was having no luck whatsoever. I won't elaborate on how bad things were. But her other challenge was that she lived in a very small town, and it wasn't a town that she could leave or was interested in leaving, both because her job was there and her family was there. So she couldn't leave this area. But she said, "Jeanette, this place is literally so small. I know everyone here, and I'm not interested. I've either already dated them or I'm not interested in dating them. Like, there are no possibilities for love for me here." And just like I was saying earlier, when I was making the phone call expecting them to tell me no, we got to give universe something to work with. We've got to imagine that what we want is possible. So I was asking her to do that. I said, just imagine that it could happen. She's like, "I don't know how it could, Jeanette. I know everyone here, and my guy is not here." So I asked her to just practice the stranger things have happened, or to find something that would work with her just to open up to the possibility. And she sounded kind of discouraged that she wasn't getting better input in our coach session, but she hung up. And for our next session, she totally stood me up. I never heard from her. And the same thing the next week. So I was like, I guess I just wasn't for her. I wasn't her cup of tea. But then she sent me an email. She was finally coming up for air to tell me her story about how a couple of days after she'd been practicing what we'd talked about, what she did was she went out with a bunch of girlfriends to the same club that they always go to, and with the same people are always there. And sure enough, they're spending the night dancing at the club, and she's having fun with friends, but there are absolutely no men there. So they close the club down. They're out on the sidewalk saying goodbye to each other. And there's, a bunch of people gathered out there because they've just closed the doors. And she said it was like the crowd parted. And there was a guy standing there on the other end. She said, just like the guy you told me to imagine, because I asked her, who would your dream guy be? Because she's focused on all these guys that don't work. So I was asking, imagine the guy that you would be interested in. She said he was fitting the description to a T. And he walked towards her with his hand extended, and he said to her, "I've been wanting to meet you all night long." And he held his hand out. They introduced each other, and he was new in town. His parents had moved there. He just moved to join them there, and he didn't know any of the places or the people or the things, so she offered to show him around. And that's what she'd been doing ever since our first coach session, which made me feel a lot better because I thought she was just standing me up because she didn't believe in this stuff. But no, she was out having the time of her life with a new love interest.
I love all of your stories. I love your energy, and I can't wait to hear what you have to offer, because I know everybody, me included, want to know what we can do to get more of Jeanette Maw, because we want what you have to offer. I know that you created a special offer for everyone who's listening to this call. Simply click on the special offer button that's on this page. So, Jeanette, let us know what we'll find there.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm really happy to be able to offer is a collection of everything I've ever created. Because a lot of people, when they hear me do interviews like this, they're excited to go pick something up, but they don't know which one, because I've got a variety of books. I've got Slacker Manifesting, which is all about chilling out to get what we want. I've got another book, Manifesting Made Simple. It's the essence of using our power to create what we want. I've got Adventures in Manifesting, sharing some of my favorite manifesting stories and some of my stories that didn't have happy endings, but what I learned from them, and passing those on to others so they can move quicker up the learning curve than I did. I've got one on money manifesting, because a lot of people, one of the very first things they're interested in creating is financial wealth and abundance. So I've got a book devoted strictly to that. The Art of Self-Love. I said, I think the number one key for us to come into alignment with what we want is to learn how to be better to ourselves. And that's such a foreign concept for so many people that I've got an ebook on that, because I was literally covering this subject in virtually every coach session I ever did. I kind of got tired of it, and I was like, I'm just going to make an ebook so everyone can just read this and I don't have to talk about it in every session. Pray Rain Journaling, that's the practice of writing what you want as if it's already happened. So I've got a variety of books that can confuse people as to where to get started. So to make it easy, I've just got them all in one package. You can get the entire library of the ebooks as well as the audio CDs when they're included, as well as the worksheets. So you don't have to make any decisions about where should I start, which one should be best. You can pick up the whole thing for ridiculous savings over buying these individually. I very often get someone who will buy one book to start with, and then they go buy a bunch of others, and I feel kind of bad after they do that, because I'm like, I appreciate it when someone else gets enthusiastic about my work, and I want to be able to offer some savings to them to be able to just dive into everything. So the complete Good Vibe Library is what is available to your listeners.
I'm looking at it. Okay. I want it all. I'm getting it all. Okay. Thank you. And two more questions. Can you share with us what you believe will be the biggest benefits that people can expect to experience starting right away and then also over time by applying what they learn in your program?
Boy, I think the biggest benefit is to realize the possibilities that our life holds. Because there are some things that we've just written off as I'm too old, or I don't have enough resources or connections, or that had never happened for me, or it's never happened before, why would it now? I think the biggest benefit is that we open ourselves up to a bigger life. I mean, literally, dreams come true. So I don't think there's any bigger gift than that. And I guess if I were to put one word on that, it's empowerment. It's empowerment to be able to live what we've dreamed of, or what we maybe even have stopped dreaming of because we just gave up on it so long ago. But once we start playing with this, and even the small ways, like with our money, with our relationships, there could be, I just think what's possible for us once we engage what's really possible for us, when we learn how to focus our attention on what we want, literally, we are going to change this planet.
Wow. Okay, one more time. You can just click on the special offer button that's on this page. Well, I just want to ask you, do you have any final words that you want to share with everybody before we sign off?
Yeah, thanks for the chance to do that, Debra. I was just sitting here thinking we covered a lot of material, and I get so excited about this. I talk really fast. I know I can be a little hard to keep up with. So on the one hand, I kind of want to apologize for overloading people with information and hopefully inspiration. That was one of my intentions, that people would feel inspired through our time together. But what I really would like people to remember is that it isn't that hard. It's possible to make this complicated stuff, but the truth is it can be as simple as do what feels good, or making happiness a priority. By letting go and by chilling out, life can get really good. We don't have to know all the principles of creation and have a dozen different manifesting tools at our fingertips. It really can be easier than we make it out to be. Because I know I share a lot of stuff in calls like this, and it's easy to be overwhelmed by it, but don't be. It's way easier than it seems sometimes.
Well, I have to tell you, Jeanette, that I have interviewed literally hundreds of people, and I think that you have given us one of the most powerful and clearest and simplest explanations of how manifestation can take place in our lives. And it's such a relief to know a way that we could live a life of ease instead of just be told that it will manifest more quickly if we're easier. But you actually showed us how. This has been so phenomenal. I cannot thank you enough. Will you come back again?
Oh, always, Debra. You were so fun to play with. Thanks again for having me.
Well, thank you so much. This has been beyond amazing. And thank you to everyone for spending this time with me and with Jeanette Maw. And I look forward to when we are all together again. I know everybody is going to want to get this package. And usually when I'm saying goodbye, I don't mention it again. But I'm just blown away by Jeanette. I'm blown away by her offer. And I can't wait to put these principles to use. I wish we could all be together and share all of our successes, but we know that they're going to happen. Anyway, thank you again to you. Thank you to everyone. And this is Debra Poneman. Thank you, dear. Have a wonderful rest of your day.